Hello, and welcome to another episode of Conservative Corner. I am your host, Shannon Carey, and tonight I have with me our school board member and candidate, Jared Talbot. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm glad you're here. So I personally have really just got involved with kind of what's going on in our community within the past year. So I'm a little late to the game on all the players. So why don't you maybe share just like a little bit about yourself? You're married, got kids, all that fun stuff.
It's great. So I'm actually running for my third consecutive term on the school board. My wife and I have been living in Goffstown for about 14 years. We've been 10 years in our current house right off of Parker Station Road.
Okay.
So stone's throw from New Boston, or playing some golf. Before that, we lived in Pinardville. We lived close to the Shaw's Plaza.
Okay.
But on the other side of it. And so it was great during when the New England sports teams were winning. St. A's would definitely have some good fireworks or parties, so we'd hear that, but we didn't have kids, so it wasn't that bad. My wife and I, we have twin boys that are 9 turning 10, and I have a little girl that's 6 going on 16. So
you have your hands full.
Yes, yeah, first and third grade. So it's been a fun adventure, but we enjoy every minute of it.
That's awesome. And you're a stone's throw from me, because I'm right on Gorham Pond. So,
Yeah.
And I didn't know that until recently. I'm like, he's my neighbor. How awesome is that? So you've served 3 terms. How long is each term? So how long have you been on the school board total?
I've been on the school board for 6 years, so I'm
wow.
going for another 3 years. School board consists of many different subcommittees. You have policy, you have curriculum, you have kind of the finance and accounting. I started out in that, and then for the past 5 years, I've been the budget committee rep from the school board. So it's a little bit different because people don't like sometimes how I vote. And it's because I advocate for the school board at the budget committee. So I do a lot of abstaining. I try not to meddle in the town motions, just like I don't want the town to kind of meddle in the school board.
Yeah.
So some people don't understand that, but I always say that it's not my vote. I'm not an at-large member for the past 5 years. I represent the school board and our interests there. So that's what I've been doing with the school board, and I've enjoyed it. We used to have meetings until about 10:30, 11 at night, but we've kind of gotten out a little bit early. We start at 7, but we get out around sometimes 8:39, which is really nice. Nice change of pace.
Yeah, that's crazy. 6 years. And now, I had been wondering, before kind of some of the things that have been going on this year, were the school board meetings so interactive with like parents, or has that kind of been like a recent development?
That was a recent development. So if we go back in time when I first got involved, we had the funding surplus that we found on the school board.
I remember
where
that's
there was,
right when I moved here.
Yeah, so 2018, I'm like, well, okay, you have all this money left over, give it back to the taxpayers for tax relief. And I, like so many other people at the time, were curious why the school board was having meetings to understand what they should do with the money.
Yeah.
And so I was a vocal advocate to say, give us back our money. Many people that resonated with. And
Thank you.
Next thing I know, I was drafted to be on the school board, and I won my first election. So that's what really started it for me at that point in time. But to answer your question, we've always asked for input. We want to know how we're doing as a board. We always ask the community, come to meetings, give public comment. That really hadn't happened since 2018.
Okay.
And then what happened this year was good and bad. I believe more voices is good because I'm an advocate of free speech. I believe that everybody should have a voice and speak what they want. But there was really a back and forth that it was unfortunate, in my opinion, because we talk about dialogue, we talk about debate, but we need to have conversations. And people coming to the school board to let us know how things are going, we listen to the administration. We're tied into the schools, especially if you have children, you're tied into that particular school. But we don't know what's going on sometimes, and we rely on the administration to tell us. Sometimes Brian doesn't know. Sometimes Wendy Kohler, the assistant superintendent, doesn't know. So parents coming to us and letting us know, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
So that has happened a lot this year, and again, there was some good and bad. The bad part is just the kind of love-hate relationship with our community, and it's more the community against itself.
Yeah.
We're just trying to listen, and I think that that's always good, is listening to our constituents.
I did say last episode I had a candidate on, Lindsay Lombo, and I had said to her, she was talking about how she just feels it, like she thought it was so amazing how you guys just sat there and really, it was clear you guys were taking in everything that was being said. But I was thinking as a parent there, like, yes, I had my opinions, but I was like, that poor school board. Like, nobody is ever coming to these meetings, and then that room is jam-packed. And I think sometimes we, as parents, I mean, yes, we totally need to have a voice, but I think we need to remember sometimes too, most of you have kids in the district or had kids in the district. It's not like you're just these random strangers trying to make policy and tell us what to do with our kids, but you guys are people too. And we're looking out for our specific children, but you guys are trying to look out for all of our kids.
Yeah, safety of the children is my most paramount
Yeah.
item. So, but I agree with you. You know, and sometimes there's a frustration. People come to the school board and we don't immediately say something back.
Right.
And I can understand the frustration
Yeah.
there, but we have to think about it ourselves as individuals, and then we have to have a dialogue with the rest of the school board members, because we always say, I'm only one of 9.
Yes.
And then we have to make sure that we have that kind of cordial dialogue and get to sometimes the root cause of the item, or how should we proceed.
And as a parent, I would much rather you guys come back with a thought out, like, we've looked at all the angles, than just give me a stock answer. Like, to me, that's almost like a slap in the face. I'd rather you take it in and come back with a response.
And for some people that I know are our neighbors in our neighborhood, you know, we're kind of taking that approach. I think Wendy Kohler is kind of doing a great job right now with looking at the MVMS, the library. I know there's been
Yes.
a lot of conversations about the library. And it was brought to our board. And Brian asked Wendy to take that on. And Wendy's reaching out to members of the community. You know, Laura Stevens, who I have a relationship with from the budget committee, she's a librarian. We're talking with her to say, from a middle school perspective, do we need to change our layout?
Yeah.
You know, some of the policies we have, they're great, but, you know, there's more that we can do. So we are taking our time, and Wendy's going to be coming back to us with her recommendation on what we should be doing. So I'm really looking forward to that. Yes, it's taken a few months, but we want to make sure we do the right thing.
You want to make an educated decision on what you guys are doing.
Yeah, because we don't want to just change something just to change it again later. We want to make sure that there is a strategy and a thought process behind it.
Yeah. Well, I can appreciate that as a parent. So you mentioned before, like in the beginning of the year, the infamous whiteboard incident, we'll just call it that. That's the only way I can phrase it, is the whiteboard incident. And I know there's a lot that you can't say because stuff was discussed in non-public, which is totally fine. But did you personally feel like in the background of the conversations that were had, that they were taking into consideration, you know, not just the parents that struggled with the board being there, but the parents that felt strongly that they wanted that board there? And do you felt like the kids were taken into consideration with that? Because there are kids in our community that are members of the LGBT community, and they want to be seen and they want to be heard, just like every kid wants to. So do you feel ultimately the right decision was made, and that you guys took everything in on that one?
It's a difficult situation. I believe that you're absolutely correct and right, that we have to acknowledge everybody in the school. To say that it was done correctly, it could have been done better.
Okay.
I always think that things could be done better. But, you know, there were some people that were upset. There's some other candidates that say they should be doing more to kind of increase visibility on that.
Okay.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. I think that we have to make sure that things are age appropriate. That's really the hard part. And we as administrators, and I know teachers and faculty, they're trying to do what's right for the community and the children that they're watching. But ultimately, I think it comes down to the parents. And just like the middle school, if you want your parents to see, or if the parents want their children to see young adult books, then they have a permission slip that they can fill out. And they also follow, I usually call it kind of the, for books, it's almost like a parental guidance when we see movies.
Yes.
Something's PG-13, something's PG. There's that kind of industry that we have around books. And our school board and our schools and libraries follow that. But again, some parents might not want their children to see that, and we understand that. And that's why there's that kind of process that we can go through.
And I think especially at the middle school, not so much at the elementary schools and the high school, I feel like the gap between ages from 5th grade to 8th grade, like there's so much maturing that happens in that time span. Like what's appropriate for a 10-year-old, it's just different for, the 13, 14-year-old.
And it is, and that's the great thing about the middle school is we have the different wings. So like the 7th and 8th graders are in one wing, the 5th and 6th graders are in another wing, but you do have those common areas. And how do we kind of manage those common areas, whether you're in 5th grade, potentially even in 4th grade now might be going up to the middle school. So it's something that we have to look at.
Okay. So switching gears a little bit, I recently found out that board members get a stipend.
Yes.
But I also was made aware that you actually try to put that back into the school. So what is that? What is that about? I just was.
Me, and again, this is me personally. I believe that I ran for this to give back to the community. Whether I'm doing this, I also teach at UNH. Yes, I get a small stipend there. But I really, truly believe in giving back to the community. So Mrs. Doyle, she's been taking my care of my kids since my boys were 3 years old, and they had the IEPs. I wanted to give back, so I was giving back water. So I was taking my stipend. It's $2,000. It hasn't increased since the 6 years I've been there. After taxes, it comes out to like maybe $700. I was going to BJ's buying coffee, the K-cups, the water. I was asking the teachers what they need, especially at the kindergarten. Glue sticks, Post-its, Lysol wipes, the non-scented ones. So I was buying a lot of that and bringing it into Glen Lake. And I think that's important is, we do get a stipend. Was I giving all of it back? No, I wasn't giving all of it back.
No, you're using you're giving up your time too from your family and everything.
That's part of volunteering. That's part of why I was elected. So I think from a school board perspective, I put in maybe 40 hours a month. You have somebody like the chair, Heather, puts in a lot of hours. Some people don't put in as much, and that's okay because we work well as a team. But especially during budget season, when I was chairing the facilities needs, doing the budget, going to the school boards, I was putting in 60 hours a month and did a lot of work for that. But again, that's something I signed up for.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that we have a stipend, but yes, I usually give most of it back to the schools.
Well, I commend you on that. That's awesome. And nothing against anyone who doesn't do that, but I think that's awesome that you do that because our teachers in all of the schools work really, really hard. So the unassigned fund balance. First of all, what is it and where does that money come from?
So the unassigned fund balance, if you had, I'm channeling my inner Scott Gross, you'd say something different. But I'm going to break it down to a Talbotism. So it really comes down to three things. It's an over-collection of revenue, which means taxes.
Okay.
Whenever the government says revenue, they mean taxes.
Okay.
In the form of grants, tuition that we get from New Boston. The other part is when we have money left over from our budget. So what we vote on in March is a bottom line budget, but a lot of different line items make up that bottom line budget.
Okay.
And if we're underspending because we aren't able to fill all of our school bus routes, there's money left over there. And that goes into the unreserved fund balance. So I look at it as an overcollection of taxes, or we have an underspend of what we were forecasted to spend.
Okay.
That's what makes up the unassigned fund balance, or that makes up the fund balance. And then, of course, you have, we know that we have contracts we have to pay that are going to carry over, and money is earmarked for those things. But the unassigned fund balance is that stuff left over that, in my belief, should be going back to the taxpayers.
I was just going to ask you, why exactly does that not come back to us at the end of the year?
So from a school board perspective, it must go back to the community. Unlike the select board, they have to keep a fund balance because they collect taxes twice a year. They have to keep money in their reserve for paying bills a couple months later. From a school board, we're not allowed to do that. The only thing that we can do is we can authorize that for being put in our contingency fund, which is, hey, something emergent, happens. We had asbestos in the high school. We had to remove that.
Okay.
That's what it's there for. It's up to 5% of our budget. We fund it at like 2.5% to 3.5%. But again, if we don't use it that year, it goes back to offset taxes.
Okay.
And then we can also vote to put it into our capital reserve fund. That's one of the warrant articles that we have this year. I believe we should have a capital reserve fund. We know that boilers are going to break down. They're at end of life. We need to make sure that we pay for new ones. But I believe that that should be raised by taxation, because if you look at the actual warrant article, it says, not to be raised by taxation.
I was going to say, it says not to be
people always
raised.
think it's free. So it's not free. We're just using money that we've already collected, and we don't want to give it back to the community.
Okay, so that's what
how
that
I
is.
look at it.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit cynical on that, because I believe that as a community, we should actively be participating and voting on what we should be spending our money on. And if we over or underspend our budget, then we should give that back. But we should say, hey, we still need these other things. Let's put that on the ballot so that people can vote on it.
Yeah. Like, this is what's coming down the pike. We are going to need your money, but we're not going to just hang on to it.
And I mean, we look at our capital reserve fund, we're asking for $250,000 a year. Every year, our CIP, our capital improvement plan, has over $1 million worth.
Okay.
Fire panels for schools, backup generators, all those different things, HVAC systems. We're talking there a couple $100,000, and if something fails, we have to order it, and it could be back ordered. So we might be without heat for a little bit, or we have to convert over to another source of heat that isn't as efficient and costs more money.
Okay.
So that's why it's important to say, as something's at end of life, we need to replace it. That's what it's for.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, do you think there is anything that the school board could be doing, or ways that they could be lowering costs to give relief to taxpayers?
So we're constantly looking at ways to do that. And again, I come back to, we have a great administration that looks at it. They looked at it working with Scott Gross and Kate McGrath. Kate McGrath is our HR director at the SAU. They looked at the system and said, wait a minute, we have all these administrative assistants that are designated at a school. They're always working the school. What if we have more of a pooled administration system? So when you call in to the high school or you call in to a number, you might get an administrator at the middle school, and they should be able to handle the things for things at the high school. So they started looking at how can we do a better service model, and how can we have a lower cost associated with that, because we have to do a lot of cross-training. And I think that's really important for employees too, is if you cross-train them, get them better skills, they're going to stay a little bit longer. So we're always looking at things. Steve Boger, who's our IT director, he's looking at, hey, we don't need phones anymore. We have computers. Why don't we use phones through our computers so that if we do have remote days and we need to contact a teacher, we don't have to give them a cell phone. We can just use their computer phone and talk to them that way. So they're always looking at things. There's always, grants that come up too that we always look at, but they're always looking at ways to be more efficient. And the important thing is they don't want to reduce services, which I agree with.
What I don't think any parent wants.
Exactly.
I don't think any parent wants that. So would you say that the driving cost, I mean, aside from the fact that like there's collective bargaining agreements, there's things that we can't control. They're just going to be what they're going to be. Would you say that administrative costs are some of like the biggest drive of like the budget continually going up?
So I understand the question. 75% of our budget is resources. And when I say resources, as in people.
Okay.
Whether it's a principal, whether it's a dean of students, whether it's a para, whether it's a janitor, they're all important. We can have principals not have assistant vice principals. Or not have vice principals. Well, what does that mean? Well, they're going to be in the class, they're not going to be able to be in the classroom. They're going to have to be focusing on other things. So I think it's about having the right people in the right areas at the right time to do the right job.
Okay.
So people might say we have too many administrators. Is it possible? It's possible, but it's not like they're doing nothing.
Okay.
They're trying to find ways of administrative assistance, helping, printing out things, making sure that scans for tests, custom tests are being conducted. Always important. Or, for paras, we want to make sure that paras are in the classroom. We don't want to take students out of the class and away from that community learning that they get, because there's a lot of emotional learning that happens in the classroom too, with just students acting together, especially in the younger grades. So I think having paras in the class helping out on that is also important, instead of pulling students out and having one-on-one time unless it's really needed.
Yeah, agreed. So it's not like people are doing nothing. They are working,
They
for
are.
sure. At least when I go in the school, people are definitely busting their butts around. So I do keep hearing that the state needs to do more. I struggle a little bit with that, only because in the end, the money's going to come from us anyway. So aside from the state doing more, what are some things that you think would work to kind of give Goffstown more money for our public schools?
You're exactly right. Whether it's coming from locally raised, whether it's being raised through the state and then given back to the communities, it's money that's coming out of our pocket, using the government gun, as I call it.
Yeah.
Are there ways that we can try to offset some of the costs? Yes and no. I mean, do we want students that are in sports or students that are in theater, do we want them paying a pay to play? I don't think that that's the right thing, especially if, they aren't coming from the best background. We want to make sure we give them the opportunity. I do hear that the state should be doing more. Well, what, you want an income tax?
That's where I wonder if it's
'Cause
going, because that's ultimately what's left.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not at the state level. I'm not running for state rep at this point. But I do see, if we're playing the chess game, the quickest thing that the state will do is say, okay, well, we're just going to increase the SWEP tax, which is based on your home property anyway. It's raised locally, retained locally, but it's coming from the state.
And isn't it tied to wouldn't that then we'd be tied more to the state kind of being in our business? Am I wrong on that?
Well, Goffstown, you'll hear Superintendent Bulkey saying this a lot. Another unfunded mandate that we've been chosen to have here at Goffstown because some assessment needs to be done. That takes time, that takes effort. Our local people are paying for those state mandated items. And I believe that, yes, we should have funding conducted, adequate funding from the state.
Oh, I agree with that 100%.
But what the state's going to do, and again, playing the chess game, all they're going to say is, well, we'll raise the SWEPT and you can reduce your residential taxes. But again, the same amount of money is coming out of our pocket and our escrows.
That's where I struggle with this. I'm like, it's going to come back to us. It's coming from our pockets to begin with. And it's just tied to the state now.
Yeah, and that's the easiest thing that the state could do. And I don't think the state is going to do anything more strategic. Could they try to change it to put an income tax in or a sales tax? They could increase our registration.
Okay.
Our registration is supposed to be going to the roads. So yeah, the state could be doing more. It's how they're going to do it. That's the question.
That's the question. We'll have to have one of the state reps on to give us an answer for that. So real quick, because we're getting to the end here, one question I was, do you think the school board is transparent enough? And if not, what do you think the board could do to be more transparent?
It depends on what you mean by transparent. Anything that comes before the board that we're supposed to have in public is done in public. Very rare, or I shouldn't say very rarely. We do go into non-public because there are discipline actions that occur. There are collective bargaining that's occur. That should all, of course, be in non-public. But all of our votes that we can take are in public, even if they aren't in camera. You have access to those minutes. Denise Morin, who is a wonderful administrative assistant, takes wonderful notes for us. So all of that information is present. I honestly think from a school board perspective, sometimes we don't get into the weeds enough and understand things. But again, that's why we're always looking for parents to come to us, or even teachers coming to the school board.
Yeah.
We have a student rep. We have a teacher rep from the high school. I will always put in a plug. We have 3 positions on the board for teachers, one from each grade or school, if you will. But I think that we need to hear more from other people so that we can understand really what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, there you have it. If we want things done and we want to hear about it, we need to speak up. So before we go, real quick, because you are running again for school board, how can people find you online or get in touch with you?
Yeah, so like I believe everybody, we have the Facebook candidate pages. Jared Talbot for school board is my main one that I have. Have another personal one that I kind of don't give out to people.
It's all good.
But you see the signs. Also through just interactions. I do have an SAU email, so people are able to engage me right now because I am part of the school board. All of those are open to public requests, so just wanted to note that. But yes, they can always even see me in town. I have no problem talking with people. You know, I say that I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a father. I'm also a listener because I think that that's what good leaders are. They are
Oh, yeah.
listeners and they empower their people.
I've seen it with you on the school board for sure. You can definitely tell you're taking things in when parents, especially this year, have been so passionate. You can tell you're like really glued into it, which I love that you're dialed into it. So thank you for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.